I'm Andrea, and everything started one evening at a family dinner in my Miami apartment. Halfway through the night, my 5-year-old daughter tugged on my hand and whispered something that made my stomach tighten. I looked at my mom across the table, smiling, like nothing was wrong, yet something in that moment didn't add up. I noticed what my daughter was holding, and my world tilted. This wasn't an innocent mistake. I'd had my doubts before, but now I knew. I didn't shout. I didn't panic. I reached for my phone-captured proof and made a call I never thought I'd have to make. 10 minutes later, there was a knock at the door. Growing up in Miami wasn't all sun and beaches. My mom, Denise, ran our house like a drill sergeant after my dad, David, walked out when I was 10. I was the one scrubbing dishes, folding laundry, keeping the lights on, while Denise barked orders. She called me her little helper, but by 16, it felt like a life sentence I didn't sign up for. My dad sent postcards from time to time, usually with $20 tucked inside, but he was a ghost. It was just me and Denise. And I learned early that keeping the peace meant keeping my mouth shut. Fast forward to my mid-20s, I met Jason, my ex-husband. He was a marketing director, all charm and big promises, the kind of guy who could sell sand in a desert. I fell hard. Denise loved him probably more than she ever loved me. She'd say, "He's got his head on straight, Andrea. You're lucky." It stung, but I believed her. We got married, had Shannon, my daughter, now 5. For a while, it was good. Jason's company was booming, and he offered Denise a job as his assistant. She ate it up, bragging about her important role to neighbors, her email signature practically glowing with pride. But cracks showed fast. Jason worked late too late, and I wasn't naive. I found the texts flirty, then explicit, with some woman from his office. When I confronted him, he didn't even deny it. Just shrugged like I was overreacting. I packed a bag, took Shannon, and left. Divorce was messy but final. Denise didn't bat an eye when I told her. "Men stray, Andrea," she said, sipping her coffee. "You should have worked it out. Think of Shannon." I stared, waiting for her to ask if I was okay. She didn't. Instead, she kept working for Jason, singing his praises like he hadn't shattered our family. "He's professional, generous," she'd say. "He still takes care of me." That was the first betrayal, but it wasn't the last. Shannon's gluten allergy showed up when she was 3. One bite of the wrong bread sent her to the ER, doubled over with stomach pain. It wasn't life-threatening, but I became a label-reading maniac. No gluten in my house, ever. I told everyone, Denise, Jason, her preschool teachers. Denise nodded, bought Shannon gluten-free snacks, even showed up with safe cookies for her birthday. She'd hug Shannon, call her my little angel, and I thought she cared. But there was always something off her smiles, too, why'd her questions about Shannon's diet too pointed. I brushed it off. Maybe I shouldn't have. Jason didn't disappear after the divorce. He wanted to stay involved, which meant sporadic visits and big promises to Shannon he rarely kept. But when the custody battle started, he got serious. He wanted 50% custody, maybe more, claiming Shannon needed both parents. I wasn't buying it. His condo was all glass and sharp edges, no place for a 5-year-old. Plus, I was the one bandaging her scraped knees, reading bedtime stories, knowing her favorite stuffed animal was a blue elephant named Sprinkles. I fought fair, but Denise took his side. "Jason's stable, Andrea," she'd say. "You're too emotional. Shannon needs structure." It felt like a knife. My own mother choosing my ex over me. I tried to keep things civil for Shannon's sake. I invited Denise over, let her take Shannon to the park, hoping she'd see I was a good mom. But she'd come back with stories about how Jason's place had a pool, how he was so good with Shannon. It made my skin crawl. Crystal, my best friend, saw through it. "Your mom's playing favorites," she'd say, passing me a coffee. "She's got her own agenda." I didn't want to believe it, but doubt crept in. Denise's job with Jason gave her status something she clung to like a lifeline. Was she protecting that over her own granddaughter? Then came the call that set everything in motion. Denise's voice was sugar-sweet over the phone, the kind that made my guard go up. "Andrea, let's have a family dinner tomorrow," she said. "Invite Jason. It's for Shannon's sake. She deserves to see us all together." My stomach twisted. I didn't trust her, not after months of her nudging Jason's case in the custody fight, but I thought of Shannon, her big eyes, her love for family time. I said yes, picturing a quiet dinner, maybe a chance to prove I could handle things. The menu was set arroz con pollo, a nod to Miami's Cuban heart. I spent the day chopping onions, marinating chicken, telling myself it'd be fine. But as I hung up, Denise's words echoed for Shannon's sake. Why did it sound like a warning? I stood in my kitchen, the humid Miami air pressing through the window, and felt a chill. Something wasn't right. I couldn't shake the feeling that inviting Jason and Denise wasn't just a dinner. It was stepping into a trap I didn't yet understand. The next morning, my phone buzzed with an email that hit like a punch. It was from Kyle Jason's lawyer, a young hotshot, with a slick tone I could feel through the screen. "Andrea, the custody hearing for Shannon is set for 3 days from now," it read. "Jason is prepared to demonstrate his suitability as a primary caregiver." My hands tightened around the phone. 3 days I'd been scrambling to gather proof I was a good mom. Doctor's notes, school records, photos of Shannon's crafts pinned to our fridge. But Jason had money, a fancy condo, and that calm smirk judges love. I felt the walls closing in. Denise didn't help. She called right after, her voice dripping with concern that didn't reach her eyes. "Andrea." "I heard about the hearing," she said. "Jason's got a stable life, job, home routine. Maybe Shannon would be better off with him just for a while. You're so emotional lately." I gripped the counter, biting back a response. Emotional. I was the one juggling Shannon's doctor visits, her gluten-free diet, her nightmares about storms. Denise knew that. But she worked for Jason, basked in his praise, and I could hear it in her tone. She was Team Jason, not mine. I tried to focus on Shannon, who was coloring at the kitchen table, her tiny hands gripping a crayon. "Baby, you okay?" I asked. She nodded, but her eyes darted to the door like she was waiting for something to go wrong. That's when my phone pinged again, a text from Ms. Lopez, Shannon's preschool teacher. "Andrea, can we talk? It's about your mom." My stomach dropped. Ms. Lopez was sharp, the kind of teacher who noticed everything. I called her back, my voice low so Shannon wouldn't hear. "Andrea, I didn't want to alarm you," Ms. Lopez started, but Denise came to school yesterday. She asked Shannon a lot of questions about her diet, what she eats, if she's ever tried cookies at school. It felt off. She was too focused on the gluten thing. I froze. Denise knew Shannon's allergy inside out. Why was she asking a 5-year-old about cookies? Ms. Lopez paused, then added. She seemed overly sweet, like she was fishing for something. "I thought you should know." My mind raced. Denise had been to our apartment a few days ago, dropping off a stuffed animal for Shannon. I'd let her in thinking she was just being a grandma. But now I remembered her lingering by my purse, her hands brushing the side pocket where I kept Shannon's allergy meds. I checked it later, nothing was missing, but I found a small jar of cookie topping in her bag when she left it on the couch. It wasn't labeled gluten-free. At the time, I thought it was careless. Now it felt like a clue. I thanked Ms. Lopez, hung up and stood in my humid Miami kitchen, the smell of last night's coffee lingering. Jason's custody push, Kyle's email, Denise's weird questions at school, it was all piling up. I looked at Shannon humming softly as she drew a lopsided sun. She didn't deserve to be caught in this, but Denise's actions weren't adding up, and that jar in her bag gnawed at me. Was she planning something, or was I paranoid I needed answers, and I needed them fast? Then my phone rang Ms. Lopez again. Andrea. I just remembered she said her voice urgent. Denise specifically asked if Shannon ate cookies at school today. I told her no, but she pressed like she was double-checking. Be careful, okay? My heart thudded. This wasn't just suspicion anymore. Something was wrong, and it was bigger than I'd feared. I sat on my couch, the Miami heat seeping through the walls, my phone still warm from Ms. Lopez's call. Denise's questions about Shannon's diet weren't just odd, they were a warning. That jar of cookie topping I'd seen in her bag flashed in my mind, unlabeled and out of place. I couldn't wait for answers to fall into my lap. I needed to know what my mom was up to, and I needed it now. Crystal, my best friend, was my only hope. She dabbled in tech, knew how to dig into places she shouldn't. Crystal, I texted, can you get into Denise's email? I know it's not legal, but I'm desperate. She didn't hesitate. For Shannon, I'm in. By midnight, Crystal sent me a file. My hands trembled as I opened it, the screen glowing in my dark apartment. The emails were between Denise and Jason sent over the past week. My heart sank with every line. They were planning to sabotage me at the dinner I'd agreed to host. Denise wrote, I'll bring cookies, say they're gluten-free. Shannon eats one, gets sick, and Andrea freaks out. Shows she can't handle her. Jason replied, I'll have meds ready to step in, look like the hero. Kyle says it'll seal the custody case. Denise's next email made my blood run cold. I suggested the cookie idea. You're welcome. When's my promotion? She wasn't just enabling Jason, she was the mastermind trading my daughter's health for a better job. I reread the emails, my hands shaking so hard I nearly dropped the phone. This wasn't carelessness, it was calculated. They wanted Shannon to hurt not enough to be dangerous, just enough to make me look unstable. The custody hearing was in 3 days, and they were betting on me crumbling. I paced the living room, the hum of the AC drowning out my racing thoughts. Shannon was asleep in her room, her blue elephant sprinkles tucked under her arm. She trusted me to keep her safe. I'd been a victim long enough swallowing Denise's jabs, Jason's lies. Not anymore. I called Crystal, my voice low but steady. They're trying to set me up, I said. They think I'll fall apart. They're wrong. Crystal didn't miss a beat. What's the plan? I took a breath, the weight of my next words settling in. I'm not just protecting Shannon. I'm going to destroy them. I'd host the dinner play along, let them think I was clueless. But I'd be ready, camera hidden in the kitchen, extra allergy meds stashed in my bedroom. I'd let them walk into their own trap, catch them red-handed, and make sure the police saw everything. It was risky, maybe even dirty, but Shannon was worth it. Crystal promised to keep digging, maybe find more emails to strengthen my case. I hung up, my mind spinning. This wasn't the Andrea who used to clean up Denise's messes or beg Jason for scraps of loyalty. This was someone new, someone who'd fight fire with fire. I glanced at Shannon's door, picturing her tiny frame curled up in bed. I'd do anything to keep her safe, even if it meant crossing lines I never thought I would. As I set my phone down, a chill hit me despite the Miami heat. I'll make them regret this, I whispered to myself, my voice hard. But a small part of me wondered, was I becoming like them, playing their game, bending the rules? I pushed the thought away. Shannon needed me to be strong, not perfect. Tomorrow's dinner wasn't just a meal, it was my chance to end this. The Miami sunset painted my apartment orange, but the air inside felt heavy, like a storm was brewing. I'd spent the day preparing for the family dinner, my hands steady as I chopped peppers for a arroz con pollo, but my mind racing. Denise and Jason thought they had me cornered. Their plan to slip Shannon a gluten-laced cookie to make me look unhinged was clear from the hacked emails. They didn't know I was on to them. Tonight I'd play their game, but on my terms. I'd hidden a small camera in the kitchen tucked behind a potted plant, its red light invisible. Extra allergy meds were stashed in my bedroom drawer. I was ready. When Denise arrived, her smile was all teeth like a shark circling. "Andrea, this smells amazing," she said, setting a bag on the counter. I nodded, my face a mask of calm, though my pulse hammered. Jason showed up next, his cologne sharp, his grin too easy. "Good to see you, Andrea," he said, like we were old friends. I forced a smile, my stomach twisting. Shannon clung to my side, her tiny hand sweaty. She didn't usually act this shy, and it set my nerves on edge. We sat at the table, the clink of plates loud in the tense silence. Denise chatted about her job, dropping Jason's name like a trophy. "He's so organized, always on top of things," she said, glancing at me. "Poor Andrea, you're always so emotional, aren't you?" Her tone was pitying, but her eyes gleamed with confidence. Jason chuckled, sipping his beer. They thought they were in control. I kept my expression neutral, though my hands itched to clench. Every word felt like a jab, but I wouldn't break, not yet. Shannon pushed her food around her eyes, darting between me and Denise. She sensed something, her little brow furrowed. "Baby, eat your chicken," I said softly, brushing her hair back. She nodded but didn't touch her plate. Denise noticed, leaning forward. "Shannon, sweetie, I brought you something special," she said, pulling a small box from her bag. My heart skipped. Here it was. She opened it, revealing a stack of cookies, their sugary smell filling the air. "These are gluten-free just for you," she said, handing one to Shannon with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I watched Shannon take the cookie, her fingers hesitant. My chest tightened, but I kept my face blank, years of swallowing Denise's barbs paying off. I'd seen the emails, I knew it wasn't gluten-free. Jason leaned back casual, but his eyes flicked to Shannon, waiting. They thought this was their moment. Shannon looked at me, then at Denise, her voice barely a whisper. "Mommy, I'm scared of Grandma." The words hit like a shockwave. Denise laughed too loud. "Oh, sweetie, don't be silly," she said, but her hand twitched. I leaned forward, pretending to adjust Shannon's plate, and glanced at the cookie in her hand. The label on the box was tucked under, but I caught a glimpse, gluten clear as day. My blood boiled, but I stayed cool. "Shannon, let's save that for later," I said, gently taking the cookie and setting it on the table. Denise's smile faltered just for a second. I stood, saying I needed to grab water, and checked my purse on the counter. Shannon's allergy meds were gone, just as I'd expected from the emails. They'd planned every detail. In the kitchen, I pulled out my phone, snapped a photo of the cookie box, and sent it to Crystal with a quick text. "It's happening. Keep the email file ready." My hands were steady, but inside I was a mess. Anger, fear, and a fierce need to protect Shannon clashing. I'd set the trap, and they'd walked right in. Back at the table, Denise was still talking, her voice too bright, Jason nodding like they were untouchable. Shannon clung to me, her eyes wide, sensing the wrongness in the air, not just from Denise, but from the whole room. I kept my voice even, asking about their day, playing the clueless mom they expected. But every second I was watching, waiting for them to slip further. The camera was rolling, catching Denise's overconfident smirk, Jason's relaxed posture. They had no idea I'd turned their plan against them. I'd let them think they were winning right until the moment I pulled the rug out. As Shannon gripped my hand tighter, her eyes panicked, I felt a surge of resolve. Denise's laugh rang out again, oblivious to the storm coming. She didn't know my camera had captured every move, every lie. I wasn't just saving Shannon tonight, I was about to end this game for good. Shannon's hand was still gripping mine, her small fingers trembling as she sat beside me at the dinner table. Denise's fake smile lingered, her eyes darting to the cookie I'd set aside, its gluten label hidden but burned into my mind. Jason sipped his beer, oblivious, his posture smug, like he'd already won. The Miami air felt thick, pressing against the windows of my apartment, but I was ice cold inside. My hidden camera was rolling, capturing every second of their overconfidence. I'd planned this moment since last night's email hack, and now it was time to spring the trap. I stood, keeping my voice light. "Shannon, let's get you some juice," I said, guiding her to my bedroom. She didn't question me, her trust absolute. I locked the door behind us, pulled out my phone, and dialed 911. "My daughter has a severe gluten allergy," I said, my tone steady despite the adrenaline. "Someone at my home intentionally gave her a product with gluten and took her medication. I have proof, photos, emails, video." The operator asked me to stay calm, said officers were on their way. I slipped the backup allergy meds from my drawer into my pocket, just in case. Back in the dining room, Denise was chatting about work, her voice too bright. "Jason's doing so well," she said, as if I cared. I nodded, my face a mask, but my mind was counting minutes. 10 minutes after my call, a firm knock echoed through the apartment. Denise froze mid-sentence. Jason's beer paused halfway to his lips. I opened the door and 2 officers stepped in, a man with a clipped voice and a woman whose eyes scanned the room like she'd seen it all before. "Ma'am, we're here about your call," the woman said. I gestured to the table where the cookie box sat, its label now visible. "That's the cookie my mom gave my daughter saying it was gluten-free. It's not. And her allergy meds are missing from my purse." Denise laughed, a high-pitched sound that didn't match her wide eyes. "Andrea, this is absurd," she said. "It's just a mix-up. I'd never hurt Shannon." Jason nodded, his charm kicking in. "She's overreacting, officers. You know how it is." I didn't flinch. "Check her bag," I said, pointing to Denise's purse on the counter. The male officer opened it, pulling out Shannon's allergy meds in their familiar blue case. Denise's face paled. "I don't know how that got there," she stammered. The woman officer raised an eyebrow, unamused. I pulled out my phone, showing the photo of the cookie box, then mentioned the emails. "I have proof they planned this," I said. "Emails between them discussing how to make me look unstable for the custody hearing. My friend Crystal can send them over." The officers exchanged a look. Denise's voice turned shrill. "This is harassment. You can't just accuse me over a cookie," but I wasn't done. I walked to the kitchen, retrieved the memory card from the hidden camera, and handed it to the woman officer. "This shows her giving Shannon the cookie knowing it had gluten. She thought I wouldn't notice." Jason's face changed, his smugness cracking. "Sawem biet." He blurted, his voice low, almost a whisper. I met his eyes, my expression hard. "Because I'm not the mess you think I am." The officers stepped into the hallway to review the footage. I sat back down, pulling Shannon close. She was quiet, her eyes wide, sensing the room's tension. Denise tried to recover, her voice softening. "Andrea, I was just trying to help. You're under so much stress. We thought I cut her off. You thought you could use my daughter to win a court case." My words were calm, but they landed like a slap. The officers returned, the woman's face grim. "We found the meds and the footage is clear," she said. "We'll need to take you both to the station for questioning." Denise's jaw dropped. "You're serious? Over a cookie?" The male officer didn't blink. "Ma'am, this is about child endangerment. Let's go." Jason stood, his hands shaking, his cool facade gone. "Andrea, how could you do this?" he said, his voice breaking. I looked at him, the man who'd cheated, who'd plotted against me with my own mother. "You did this to yourselves," I said. The officers led them out, Denise still protesting, Jason silent, his eyes avoiding mine. As the door closed, I held Shannon tighter, her small body warm against me. Crystal texted emails sent to police. You got this. I'd outplayed them, turned their plan into their downfall. The camera, the emails, Ms. Lopez's statement about Denise's school visit, they'd all sealed the case. But as Shannon looked up at me, her eyes searching, a weight settled in my chest. I'd won this round, but at what cost? I'd played dirty, hacked emails, set a trap. Was I still the mom Shannon needed? Jason's shocked face flashed in my mind, his words sour beat ringing in my ears. I smiled, a cold edge to it, but my heart felt heavy. I'd beaten them at their own game, but the victory wasn't clean. The fight wasn't over, and I was already dreading what came next. The apartment was quiet after the police left, the hum of the AC, the only sound breaking the silence. Shannon curled up against me on the couch, her blue elephant sprinkles clutched tight. Her breathing was steady, but her earlier words, "I'm scared of Grandma," echoed in my head. I'd beaten Denise and Jason at their own game, turned their plan to sabotage me into their downfall. But as I sat there, the weight of what I'd done settled in. I'd hacked emails, set a trap, played dirty. The victory felt sharp, not sweet. Crystal came over that night, her laptop open with the email files she'd sent to the police. You nailed them, she said, handing me a coffee. I nodded, but my chest was tight. The police had enough: my photos, the video from the hidden camera, Ms. Lopez's statement about Denise's odd questions at school, and those damning emails. Denise and Jason were charged with child endangerment. The judge didn't hesitate: 6 months in jail for both, no plea deals, no probation. Jason's lawyer Kyle tried to spin it, but the evidence was ironclad. The custody hearing was a formality after that. I got full legal and physical custody of Shannon, with Jason limited to supervised visits, no overnights, and a stack of court-ordered parenting classes he'd probably skip. I didn't go to their hearings. I didn't need to see Denise's fake tears or Jason's polished excuses. Crystal kept me updated, texting me when the gavel came down. "They're done," she wrote. I blocked their numbers that same day: Denise, Jason, even Kyle. No calls, no texts, no apologies. I was done with them, done with the family that chose ambition over my daughter. It wasn't just a boundary. It was a wall built to last forever. Miami's heat rolled on outside, but my apartment felt colder, emptier, like I'd carved out a piece of my past and left it behind. Shannon was safe, and that was everything. I enrolled her in therapy, a gentle woman who let her draw her feelings in bright colors. Shannon's nightmares about storms eased, and she started smiling more, her crayons sketching suns again. But one night as I tucked her into bed, she looked up at me, her eyes big and searching. "Mommy, why are you different now?" she asked, her voice small. I froze my hand on her blanket. Different, I saw it in her face. She'd seen the Andrea who'd planned, manipulated, outsmarted. Not the mom who sang lullabies or braided her hair. My throat tightened. "I'm still me, baby," I said, kissing her forehead. But as I turned off her light, her question lingered. Had I changed? I sat in the dark, sipping cold coffee, replaying the dinner. I'd been so sure, so calculated, hacking Denise's emails, setting up that camera, calling the police with precision. It worked. I protected Shannon, won custody, ended their game. But at what cost? I'd crossed lines, dipped into the same murky tactics Denise and Jason used. The emails were illegal, the trap ruthless. I wasn't like them. I'd never hurt Shannon, but I'd become someone who could scheme, who could smile while plotting. That wasn't the mom I wanted Shannon to see, but it was the mom she needed to keep her safe. Crystal didn't sugarcoat it. "You did what you had to," she said one evening, sprawled on my couch. "They were playing dirty first." She was right, but it didn't erase the unease. I looked at Shannon's drawings on the fridge, her lopsided sons and stick figure families. I'd won, but at what cost? Sometimes you have to get dirty to protect what matters, but you can't let it steal who you are. I almost lost sight of that, caught up in outsmarting them. I'd been so focused on winning, I hadn't seen how it changed me in Shannon's eyes. To anyone listening, here's what I learned. Trust your gut when something feels wrong, especially with family. Toxic people, blood or not, don't deserve a place in your life if they'd hurt your child to get what they want. I was lucky. I caught Denise and Jason before Shannon took a bite. But don't wait for proof like I did. If you see red flags, act, get a lawyer, document everything, protect what's yours. And if you have to fight dirty, be careful. It might save you, but it can cost you something too. Don't let it take your soul. Shannon's safe now, and we're building a quiet life, just us and Crystal's bad jokes. I check labels twice, lock my doors, and hold Shannon a little tighter. I'm not perfect, but I'm the mom she needs. Thank you for listening to my story. Please subscribe and drop a comment with your own experiences. I'd love to hear them. Let's keep this conversation going.
Don't you dare ask us to cancel our plans again. We've had these Elton John tickets for months, my mother yelled, her voice echoing through my hospital room. I sat there, stunned, clutching my phone with trembling hands. It was Christmas Eve at Las Vegas Medical Center. Just me, my 2-year-old twins Ethan and Emily playing quietly in the corner, and a nurse named Valerie checking my vitals. The pain in my abdomen was excruciating, like someone was twisting a knife inside me, but the look of indifference on my mother's face through the video call hurt even more. My name is Natasha Wilson. I'm 33 years old, and for as long as I can remember, I've been the afterthought in my own family. My younger sister Jessica, the golden child, could do no wrong in my parents' eyes. Meanwhile, I couldn't even get them to watch their only grandchildren while I underwent emergency surgery for complications related to my husband's death 6 months ago. The doctors had found internal bleeding that required immediate attention, but all my parents cared about was their concert tickets and celebrating Christmas Eve with Jessica. When I finally asked for their help after exhausting all other options, my dad's response cut deeper than any surgical tool could. "You're becoming a real nuisance and burden, Natasha. We're retired now. We deserve to enjoy our lives without your constant problems." I've been supporting my parents financially since they took early retirement 3 years ago. Every month, without fail, I sent them $2,500 to help with their mortgage and expenses, even after James died. I did it out of love and duty, believing family should support each other. How foolish I was. As my tears fell silently onto the hospital blanket, Valerie gently squeezed my shoulder. "My friend Olivia is a professional nanny who specializes in childhood trauma. Let me call her for you," she offered, her kindness a stark contrast to my parents' callousness. The twins were still too young to understand what was happening. They'd already lost their father to a car accident. Now they might lose me too if the surgery went wrong. The thought terrified me, but not as much as leaving them with people who saw them as burdens. In that moment, with pain shooting through my body and disappointment crushing my heart, I made my decision. "Yes, please call her," I told Valerie. And with those words, I began cutting the poisonous ties to the people who had raised me, but never truly loved me. As I hung up the phone, a wave of memories washed over me. My childhood had been filled with moments of being overlooked, while Jessica received all the attention. When I graduated college with honors, my parents barely acknowledged it because Jessica had been cast in a local commercial that same weekend. When I married James, they complained about the wedding venue being too far from their home. Even when the twins were born, they visited only once, claiming the babies were too fussy for their liking. James had been my rock through it all. He understood the pain of family disappointment, having been estranged from his own father for years. "We'll build our own family," he would say, "one that knows how to love." And we did, creating a warm home filled with laughter and acceptance. But 6 months ago, a drunk driver stole him away, leaving me to raise our children alone while battling depression and grief. Despite my loss, I continued supporting my parents. I even increased the monthly amount when they mentioned struggling with inflation. I wanted to be better than them, to show that family should stand by each other no matter what. The irony was crushing. Here I was, bleeding internally, possibly dying, and they couldn't miss one concert to care for my children. Valerie returned with news that her friend Olivia would arrive within the hour. "She's amazing with kids," Valerie assured me. She used to work with trauma victims at the children's hospital before becoming a private nanny. "How much will this cost?" I asked, worry creeping into my voice. Medical bills were already piling up since James's insurance coverage had limitations. "Don't worry about that now," Valerie said. "Let's focus on getting you ready for surgery." But I was worried. I thought about the $2,500 I was scheduled to transfer to my parents next week. Money that could now help pay for childcare instead. The thought sparked something inside me, a flame of self-preservation that had been extinguished years ago. When Olivia arrived, she was everything Valerie had promised: kind, professional, and immediately connecting with the twins. As hospital staff prepared me for surgery, I made a decision. "Could you bring me my phone one more time?" I asked Valerie. With shaking hands, I sent 2 messages. The first was to my bank, canceling all future automatic transfers to my parents' account. The second was to my parents. "I will no longer be providing financial support. My children and I deserve better than being your afterthoughts. Don't contact me again." As they wheeled me toward the operating room, I felt something unexpected through the pain and fear: freedom. The surgery was successful, but left me weaker than anticipated. I spent 5 days in the hospital, drifting in and out of consciousness, grateful for Olivia, who had gone above and beyond by staying with the twins in my hospital room during the days and taking them to my apartment at night. During one of my more lucid moments, I noticed my phone blinking with notifications: 27 missed calls and numerous text messages from my parents and Jessica. Most of the messages followed a predictable pattern: confusion, then anger, then desperate pleas about their mortgage payment. Not once did they ask how my surgery went or if the twins were okay. The final message from my father was particularly telling: "You can't just cut us off like this. We've planned a cruise next month and the tickets are non-refundable." My sister's messages were different. She seemed genuinely confused. "Mom and Dad just told me you were having some minor procedure. What's going on? Why are they freaking out about money?" It dawned on me that my parents had lied to Jessica about the severity of my situation to justify their choice of concert over grandchildren. I decided to tell her the truth, sending her the full story while still groggy from medication. Her response came quickly. "Oh my God, Natasha. I had no idea it was an emergency surgery. They told me you were just being dramatic about a routine checkup. I would have watched the twins if I'd known. I'm so sorry." I believed her. Jessica wasn't cruel. She had just been raised in an environment where she was taught that her needs came first. Perhaps this revelation would help her see our parents for who they truly were. By the time I was discharged, I had made several decisions. First, I hired Olivia part-time to help with the twins during my recovery. Second, I contacted a lawyer to draft a will designating a trusted friend as the twins' guardian should anything happen to me, certainly not my parents. Third, I blocked my parents' numbers, allowing only Jessica limited contact as I assessed her sincerity. The financial implications of my decision were significant. The $2,500 monthly payment I'd been making to my parents represented nearly a third of my income as a graphic designer. Without that burden, I could actually afford proper childcare, and maybe even start rebuilding the emergency fund that had been depleted after James's death. That night, as I lay in my own bed with the twins sleeping in their room across the hall, I felt a complex mix of emotions. There was guilt, the ingrained feeling that I was somehow wrong for putting myself and my children first. There was fear about managing recovery while caring for 2 toddlers, but there was also an unfamiliar sense of self-respect taking root. My phone pinged with a text from Jessica. "I just had a huge fight with Mom and Dad about how they treated you. I'm staying at a hotel tonight. Can we talk tomorrow?" Maybe I wasn't completely alone after all. 2 weeks after my surgery, I was slowly regaining my strength. The incision site still throbbed painfully when I moved too quickly, but I was managing better each day. Olivia had been a godsend, arriving each morning to help with the twins while I worked from home. My graphic design clients had been surprisingly understanding about my limited availability, and I was grateful for the remote work that allowed me to stay close to my children. Jessica had visited twice, bringing healthy meals and spending time with the twins. Our conversations were cautious at first, but eventually she opened up about her own experiences with our parents. "They always made it seem like you were choosing to distance yourself from the family," she admitted one evening as we watched the twins play. "I never realized they were pushing you away." I was beginning to see a new side to my sister, one that had been hidden beneath years of our parents' manipulation. While I wasn't ready to completely trust her yet, I appreciated her efforts. Then came the knock at the door I had been half expecting. Through the peephole, I saw my parents standing in the hallway. My mother was clutching her designer purse nervously, while my father stood with his arms crossed, familiar impatience etched on his face. I hesitated, heart pounding, before opening the door just enough to speak through the gap. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice steadier than I expected. "Natasha, darling, we've been so worried," my mother began, her sugary tone immediately raising my defenses. "You haven't been answering our calls, and we needed to make sure you and the twins were all right." "We're fine," I replied flatly. "Now, if that's all—" "It's not all," my father interrupted, pushing slightly against the door. "We need to discuss this ridiculous financial situation. The bank called about our mortgage payment, and we had to dip into our cruise savings to cover it." The audacity was breathtaking. No questions about my recovery, no concern for their grandchildren, just demands about money. "I told you I'm cutting financial ties," I said. "I meant it." "But sweetie," my mother pleaded, her voice rising an octave, "we've come to depend on that money. Your father and I adjusted our lifestyle based on your commitment to help us." "My commitment?" I echoed in disbelief. "I've been sending money out of guilt and obligation while you couldn't even watch your grandchildren during my emergency surgery." My father's face darkened. "That's not fair, Natasha. We had plans." "Plans more important than my children's safety, more important than my life," I replied, anger rising. "Do you know what the doctor said? There was a chance I might not survive that surgery. Did you even bother to ask?" Their silence was answer enough. "We made one mistake," my mother whispered dramatically. "Are you really going to punish us like this?" "This isn't punishment, Mom. This is consequence," I said, feeling a strange calm overtake me. "I've spent my entire life seeking your approval and support, and in my moment of greatest need, you chose Elton John tickets over helping me." "We're your parents," my father interjected, his tone shifting to demand respect. "And I'm a parent too," I countered. "I would never treat Ethan and Emily the way you've treated me. Never." Just then, Emily toddled into view, clutching her stuffed giraffe. My mother instantly switched tactics. "There's my precious grandbaby," she cooed, bending down. "Grandma brought presents." Emily, unfamiliar with these relative strangers, backed away and looked at me with uncertainty in her eyes. "I think you should leave," I said quietly. "When I'm ready to talk, if I'm ever ready, I'll reach out." "But the money," my father started. "Is no longer your concern," I finished, gently closing the door. The next morning, my parents returned with reinforcements. My Aunt Patty, my mother's sister, who had always positioned herself as the family peacemaker. "Natasha, honey, let's be reasonable," Aunt Patty pleaded from outside my door, which I had not opened. "Your parents are struggling without your help." "They managed their finances for decades before I started helping them," I replied through the door. "They chose early retirement knowing their savings weren't adequate." My mother's voice broke in. "We made those decisions because you promised to help us. We've had to cancel our cruise, and now we might lose the house." Their attempts at manipulation were so transparent now that I'd stepped back from the fog of guilt they'd surrounded me with for years. When had I ever promised lifetime support? I'd offered to help temporarily after their retirement, but somehow that had evolved into an expected permanent arrangement. Mom, Dad, I'm recovering from major surgery and caring for 2 toddlers. This conversation is over, I said firmly before walking away from the door, ignoring their continued knocking and pleading. Later that day, I received a group email from my father addressed to the entire extended family, detailing how I had abandoned them in their time of need after they had sacrificed everything for me. The email conveniently omitted their refusal to help with the twins during my emergency surgery, instead painting me as an ungrateful daughter who had suddenly cut them off without reason. What they hadn't anticipated was the backlash. My cousin Michael, who lived near my parents, replied to the group, "Uncle Robert, didn't you just buy a new boat last month? And Aunt Diana, wasn't that a new diamond tennis bracelet you were showing off at Thanksgiving?" Other family members chimed in, many privately messaging me to ask for the full story. Even Aunt Patty called me directly after learning the truth. "I had no idea about your surgery," she admitted. "They told me you were just being dramatic about some routine procedure and using it to punish them financially." Meanwhile, Jessica had fully taken my side after witnessing our parents' behavior firsthand. She helped me craft a single, factual response to the family email thread, simply stating, "I recently underwent emergency surgery with a significant risk of complications. My parents refused to watch my children during this time because they had concert tickets. I am now focusing on my recovery and caring for my twins without additional stress." The support that followed was overwhelming. Cousin Michael's wife dropped off home-cooked meals. A second cousin I barely knew offered her services as a part-time babysitter free of charge. Jessica started spending weekends at my apartment, getting to know her niece and nephew while helping me recuperate. Most surprisingly, Valerie from the hospital connected me with a support group for young widowed parents. Their first meeting was held via Zoom so I could participate from home, and for the first time since James died, I felt truly understood by people who had walked my path. My parents' financial situation, meanwhile, deteriorated quickly. They had indeed been living beyond their means, counting on my monthly contributions to maintain their lifestyle of travel and luxury purchases. Jessica discovered they had taken a second mortgage on their house a year ago to buy their boat, assuming I would continue subsidizing their primary mortgage indefinitely. "They've been lying to everyone," Jessica said, shocked after helping them review their finances at their request. "They're not destitute, they're just overspent. They'd be fine if they sold the boat and vacation timeshare." Their increasingly desperate voicemails and texts continued, but with each passing day, their hold on me weakened. I was building something new from the ashes of their betrayal, a genuine support network based on mutual care rather than obligation. 1 month after my surgery, a major unexpected twist occurred. My parents received a foreclosure notice. Jessica called to inform me, her voice a mix of concern and exasperation. "They're in complete panic mode," she explained. "The bank is giving them 60 days to catch up on payments or they'll lose the house." "What about their retirement funds?" I asked, bouncing Emily on my knee while Ethan napped. "Mostly depleted. They spent a chunk on that boat, then invested the rest in some scheme Dad's golf buddy recommended. They lost almost everything," Jessica sighed. "I'm not saying you should help them, Natasha. I just thought you should know." Later that evening, I received desperate texts from both parents, now abandoning all pretense of concern for my well-being and openly begging for money. My mother's message was particularly revealing. "We never thought you'd actually cut us off. We assumed you were just angry and would start sending money again after a week or two." Their assumption that my boundaries weren't real infuriated me. All those years of putting their needs before mine, of accepting their mistreatment, they had never respected me at all. Meanwhile, my own life was transforming in unexpected ways. The support group had become a lifeline, connecting me with other parents facing similar challenges. Through them, I met Diana, a real estate agent whose husband had died of cancer 2 years earlier, leaving her with a 3-year-old son. She helped me consider options I hadn't thought possible, like selling my too-small apartment and using the equity to move to a more affordable neighborhood with better childcare options. I'd also started a small side business designing memorial websites, inspired by the one I'd created for James. Several members of my support group had commissioned sites, and word was spreading. For the first time since becoming a widow, I felt a sense of purpose beyond mere survival. The contrast between my growth and my parents' collapse became even more apparent when they showed up unannounced at my apartment again, this time with a detailed spreadsheet of their debts. "We need $14,000 to catch up on the mortgage and avoid foreclosure," my father explained, his usual authoritative tone now tinged with desperation. I invited them in, not out of obligation, but because I was curious to hear their perspective now that they were truly facing consequences. "What about selling the boat?" I asked, gesturing for them to sit at my small dining table. "We'd take a loss," my father protested. "And the timeshare?" "We've tried, but the market is terrible," my mother added quickly. "Besides, those are our retirement luxuries." I almost laughed at the absurdity. Luxuries you can't afford. "We could afford them with your help," my father countered, his tone hardening. "It's the least you could do after everything we've done for you." "What exactly have you done for me?" I asked quietly, the question hanging in the air like a challenge. The twins chose that moment to toddle into the room, Ethan clutching his favorite truck and Emily babbling happily. My parents' expressions softened instantly. "There are our precious babies," my mother cooed, reaching for Emily, who promptly hid behind my legs. "They don't know you," I stated simply. "You've seen them, 3 times in their lives? You chose not to be involved?" "That's not fair," my father protested. "We're busy people." "Too busy for your only grandchildren. Too busy to help your daughter through emergency surgery, but not too busy to ask for money," I observed. "I think that says everything about your priorities." My mother's face crumpled. Whether from genuine emotion or calculated manipulation, I couldn't tell anymore. "Without your help, we'll lose everything," she whispered. "I lost my husband," I replied, my voice steady. "My children lost their father. We survived. You'll survive too." 3 months after my surgery, my parents faced the inevitable. They were forced to sell their house to avoid foreclosure. Jessica kept me updated on their situation, though I maintained my distance. They had managed to find a modest condo, significantly downsizing from their 4,000-square-foot lakefront property. My father had reluctantly sold his boat at a loss, and they had finally unloaded the timeshare for a fraction of what they'd paid. "They're actually blaming you for their financial problems in front of everyone," Jessica informed me during one of her weekly visits. "It's bizarre to watch. They tell anyone who'll listen that you abandoned them after promising lifelong support." "Let them talk," I replied, feeling surprisingly unbothered. "The truth speaks for itself." And it did. My extended family had largely rallied around me after learning the full story. Even my father's sister, who had always taken his side in family disputes, called to express her support after hearing about their refusal to help during my surgery. Meanwhile, my own situation had improved dramatically. Diana from my support group had helped me find and purchase a small 3-bedroom house in a family-friendly neighborhood. The mortgage payments were actually less than my apartment rent had been, and the twins had a backyard to play in for the first time in their lives. My side business designing memorial websites had grown enough that I could reduce my graphic design clients and focus on work that felt meaningful. Olivia still helped with childcare 3 days a week, but I'd adjusted my schedule to maximize time with Ethan and Emily. Most importantly, I'd found a community. Neighbors brought casseroles when we moved in. The support group organized playdates. Jessica had become a genuine sister rather than a competitor for our parents' affection. Even Valerie from the hospital occasionally stopped by with her children. I had lost my husband and cut ties with my parents, yet somehow I felt less alone than ever before. 6 months after my surgery, I received a letter, an actual handwritten letter from my mother. I almost threw it away unopened, but curiosity won out. Inside was something I'd never seen before. A genuine apology. "I've had time to reflect on my behavior," she wrote. "Watching you build a life without our help has forced me to confront some painful truths about myself as a mother. I was jealous of your independence, your resilience. I resented that you didn't seem to need me the way I needed my own mother. But now I see that you did need me, just not in the ways I wanted to be needed. When you asked us to care for the twins during your surgery, you were reaching out and we failed you completely. I'm deeply sorry." The letter continued, explaining how they had completely restructured their finances. My father had taken a part-time job at a local hardware store. They had sold most of their luxury items and were living modestly for the first time in decades. She didn't ask for money or even forgiveness, just acknowledgement of her apology. I showed the letter to Jessica, who was skeptical. "They've been talking about writing to you for weeks. Dad was against it at first, but I think he's starting to see things differently too, especially after his heart scare last month." "Heart scare?" I asked, concerned despite myself. "Just high blood pressure and chest pains, but it scared him. He's on medication now and actually following doctor's orders," Jessica explained. "I think facing mortality has humbled him a bit." I wasn't ready to respond to the letter immediately. I needed time to process my feelings. Was this genuine remorse or another manipulation tactic? Had they truly changed, or were they simply adapting their strategy? That night, I looked at old family photos for the first time since cutting ties. Behind the smiling faces, I saw patterns I'd been blind to before. My parents had always been performers, playing the role of perfect parents while serving their own needs first. A year after my surgery, I finally agreed to meet my parents at a neutral location, a quiet cafe near my new home. When they arrived, I barely recognized them. My father seemed smaller somehow, his confident posture replaced by a humbler demeanor. My mother's designer clothes had been exchanged for simple, practical attire. The twins were with Jessica for the afternoon. I wasn't ready for a family reunion just yet. We sat in awkward silence until my father did something unprecedented. He cried. "I've been a terrible father," he admitted, his voice breaking, "and an even worse grandfather. I don't expect your forgiveness, but I want you to know that I see it now. How selfish we've been." My mother reached across the table, not quite touching my hand, but gesturing toward it. "We've spent months in family therapy," she explained. "It was Jessica's idea, and we resisted at first, but it's been transformative. I didn't rush to forgive them or make promises I couldn't keep. Instead, I shared pictures of the twins and told them about our new life. They listened without interrupting, without making it about themselves, perhaps for the first time ever. As we parted, my father asked quietly, "Would it be possible someday to know our grandchildren?" I considered this carefully before answering. "That depends on your actions, not your words. If you're genuinely committed to change, we can start with short, supervised visits. But understand this, my children will only have relationships with people who respect their mother." Walking away from that meeting, I felt neither the crushing weight of obligation nor the burning resentment that had defined our relationship for so long. Instead, I felt something new. The calm assurance of a woman who knew her worth, who had created boundaries and would enforce them without apology. Whether my parents could truly change remained to be seen, but I had already transformed, from a daughter desperate for approval into a mother fierce in her protection and clear in her expectations.